massive tsunami decimated the Mediterranean.
That is the big problem with the tsunami. Just don't stop.
Prehistoric villages obliterated in an instant.
These were the forefathers of all the great civilizations of the old world. In the blink of an eye, everything that they had built suddenly washed away.
Did this ancient tsunami really happen? And could it happen again? Mediterranean Sea, 6000 BC. A wall of water taller than the Statue of Liberty races across the sea. The tsunami crashes into the coasts of 3 continents. Millions of tons of seawater rush ashore at more than 30 miles an hour.
Sounds like a freight train coming. So if you know something about tsunamis, you know what to do, and that's run.
A cheetah would be lucky to outrun this wave. A person really has no chance.
Ancient coastal settlements are obliterated in an instant. Seawater penetrates for miles inland.
The water level just starts to rise, and next thing you know, you have this entire torrent of a river running through the streets of your town.
From their perspective, it would have just happened instantaneously without any knowledge that it was coming at all.
Within hours, the storm has devastated villages for hundreds of miles. The entire eastern Mediterranean is in ruins.
It's pretty easy to imagine how terrifying it must have been to experience a tsunami, because we know how terrifying it is now. It would just be a devastating experience.
For the Mediterranean, this is a scenario of catastrophic proportions. But 8,000 years after these lethal waves raced ashore, many questions remain unanswered. What caused this mega tsunami? How devastating was it? And how did this affect the prehistoric people living along the coast? To understand how powerful this prehistoric megastorm might have been, we can look at its modern counterpart. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. On December 26, 2004, a tsunami with the power of 5 million tons of TNT exploded across the Indian Ocean. Waves as tall as 40 feet obliterated coastal villages and towns.
It's just a monumental event. It's, you know, take the worst hurricane and multiply it. The destruction was really very, very dire.
Unless you were on top of a mountain or on the top of a tree, you didn't survive, which is why so many people lost their lives.
The toll of death and destruction was staggering. More than 230,000 people killed in more than a dozen countries, from Southeast Asia to Africa. 1.8 million homeless. Damages totaling $10 billion. It gave the modern world a first-hand look at the awesome power of a tsunami.
Tsunamis are incredibly destructive. We usually think of water as being soft and gentle, but it's actually really, really heavy. A volume of water about the size of your kitchen stove weighs a ton, 2,200 pounds. It's like being hit by a car.
But even the largest waves recorded in 2004 were not as massive as the ones thought to have struck the Mediterranean 8,000 years ago.
8,000 years ago, the sort of architecture and engineering you saw would have just been obliterated by a tsunami. Even today, we see modern buildings, steel-reinforced concrete, just being raised by the power of these waves. So you can imagine a prehistoric stone building or a prehistoric wooden structure. It would have just been like a paper box just destroyed.
As in 2004, it is believed the waves from the ancient tsunami penetrated far inland.
That is the big problem with the tsunami. Just don't stop. It's just a never-ending wave that goes in.
So if you have a plain, a very flat land, then a tsunami can move inland by many, many miles. We've seen that in 2004. The tsunami flooded about 6 miles inland.
Could the scene of destruction inflicted upon Southeast Asia have been a repeat of what happened in the Mediterranean 8,000 years before? Could this ancient storm also have obliterated thousands of miles of coastline?
Survivors in Thailand said there was no warning of the impending disaster. 11,000 people or more were
Unlike the 2004 tsunami, where the immense destruction and plight of its victims were documented for the world to see, this ancient storm unleashed its destruction long before recorded history. The victims and the scale of this prehistoric megastorm are a mystery. How might this tsunami have impacted the course of history? "8,000 years ago, the seeds of civilization were literally being sown on the coast of the Mediterranean.
8,000 years ago, people were just starting to settle down. We had the beginnings of agriculture in the region.
Known as the Neolithic era, this is a period when people stopped being hunter-gatherers and created the first permanent settlements. Some of the world's very first farmers probably made their homes along these shores.
The Neolithic was a real revolution in human society because for the very first time we could afford to stay put. We could become civilized because we weren't forced to be migrants chasing whatever large herd animals we depended on for food.
The advent of agriculture in ancient settlements throughout this region helped initiate the dawn of civilization.
Towns were springing up all along the coast of the Mediterranean. I mean, this was a real hotbed of the development of civilization.
Pretty much everything we associate with our modern Western way of life really does go back to what those people who were living around the Mediterranean gave birth to.
For more than 8 millennia, all evidence of this prehistoric megastorm would remain hidden. Over time, volcanic eruptions, the encroaching ocean, and natural erosion slowly erased evidence of this storm and its destruction. But in 1996, the first clue that an ancient tsunami may have been set off in the Mediterranean would be discovered in the most unlikely of places, nearly 2 miles up, on the top of a volcano. A team of researchers from Italy's National Institute for Geophysics and Volcanology, led by Maria Teresa Pereschi, was studying Mount Etna on the Mediterranean island of Sicily. Etna is Europe's tallest and one of its most active volcanoes. It looms on the very edge of the Mediterranean Sea.
This is a quite dangerous place to stay for a long time. If Mount Etna erupts just now, we are in the middle of the path of the lava flow.
Just below Etna's summit crater, in a region known as the Valle del Bove, the scientists discovered an area that looked vastly different from the rest of the mountain. They found sheer walls, 1,000 feet high, that suggested a giant chunk of the mountain fell violently away. Could this have been caused by a landslide?
The landslide started from the western wall of the Valle del Bove in front of us, and here is the northern margin, and it started from here and moved towards the sea in this direction.
With Etna positioned right on the edge of the Mediterranean, a large landslide could have easily crashed into the sea. And if the landslide was big enough and moving at a high rate of speed, the impact could have triggered a massive tsunami.
You know, if you have a lake and you throw a rock into it, you generate a wave. Now imagine this being a very big rock, being a big boulder. Now imagine it being, large masses of mud that are sliding into the water. As far as a tsunami is concerned, the entire world ocean is just one big lake.
The key to the severity of any tsunami lies in its trigger. Tsunami waves don't simply happen on their own. There has to be something to set them off. A massive energy source that initiates these waves and sends them surging through the water. The #1 cause of tsunamis is undersea earthquakes. That's what triggered the massive waves in the Indian Ocean in 2004. The seafloor ruptured suddenly, thrusting one plate upward and producing a huge bulge on the water's surface.
The amount of water that is displaced because of that earthquake can amount to up to about 2 times the explosive force that was used in World War I. We're talking the force of about 5 megatons of TNT.
As destructive as quake-generated tsunamis are, another trigger has the potential to unleash far more lethal tsunamis: a landslide.
If you jump into a swimming pool, you already make a bit of a wave. Now imagine something which is 1,000,000 times your volume crashing at a higher speed into the sea, and then you'll get the picture a little bit.
If the Italian research team is correct that a large part of Mount Etna tore away in a landslide, the results could have been devastating for the Mediterranean region. Stefan Greeley studies tsunamis at the University of Rhode Island. In a wave tank, he is able to simulate how a lethal tsunami wave is generated when a landslide slams into the sea.
Here we built a simple scale model of a landslide, just like a piece of a volcano falling into the ocean. It would be a huge block, and it would slide down, hit the surface, and create a big wave. So here it is. So all that energy of the motion of that big piece of rock will be then conveyed to the water and make waves, and then those waves will transport the energy all the way to very distant shores.
Is this the scenario that happened in the Mediterranean 8,000 years ago? Could a massive landslide have broken away from Mount Etna and set off a lethal tsunami that devastated coastal settlements? A team of Italian researchers believes it did. But to prove their theory, they must uncover hard evidence of this prehistoric megastorm and reveal an ancient tsunami to the world. 6,000 BC. All along the shores of the Mediterranean, prehistoric settlements are alive with activity. Suddenly, a massive tsunami races across the sea with the speed of a jetliner. Waves taller than a 10-story building crash into the coasts of 3 continents, obliterating everything in their path. But did this prehistoric megastorm really happen? What could have triggered it? How many villages would it have wiped out? And who were the victims? A team of Italian scientists is attempting to piece together evidence of this prehistoric megastorm and reveal how its destructive force may have altered history.
This wall of water spread toward all directions, flattening and breaking up into a series of waves.
The team believes the trigger for this tsunami was a massive landslide of debris from the volcano Mount Etna, which looms over the Mediterranean Sea on the coast of the island of Sicily. Landslides have the potential to create tremendously violent waves. The largest wave ever recorded was generated by one. In 1958, off the coast of southeastern Alaska, in Lituya Bay, an earthquake triggered a massive avalanche. The debris crashed into the bay with so much power that it sent water surging 1,700 feet up the other shore.
The wave generated in Lituya Bay in 1958 would have engulfed the Sears Tower had it been there. It was that tall. And this just scoured the land along the bay. It snapped full-grown trees like they were toothpicks.
Had that wave not been contained in a sort of natural bathtub, there's no telling how far it could have traveled, nor how much damage it could have done. Tsunami waves are packed with tremendous power and can travel thousands of miles in a matter of hours.
Tsunamis travel at high speed in the open ocean. They can travel about roughly 500 miles an hour, similar to jet speeds.
But as tsunami waves approach shore, they slow down. This causes them to bunch up